I want you to imagine this opening montage. Picture a housewife getting ready. She puts on her best swing dress. She puts on a string of pearls. She does her hair, taking out the curlers. She puts on her most stylish flats, her engagement ring with a big round diamond in the center. And the finishing touch. Lipstick the shade of the zombie blood that dried on her chainsaw and on her once pristine hardwood floors. Hey fellas and lovely viewers, it's Storm. Have you ever wanted to bash a zombie's head with a frying pan while wearing an absolutely slay-tastic outfit? Yes, that's a word. No? Well, I did, so today we're going to talk about Aberford. Also, I have no idea how to pronounce this, so I'll be saying it as Aberford as it seems like the most logical to me, and will be saying it like this for the rest of the video. Thank you very much. So what is Aberford? It's technically a game by Sketchy Panda Games, an indie company apparently based in Utah. The Kickstarter description reads, "We're making a PC/console game with zombies and 50s housewives, fight social norms and the undead in a pair of killer heels." Which, let's be honest, a beat them all in the style of Saints Row games with retro aesthetics and zombies, which also had underlying themes of societal issues, present at the time and still very relevant today. Tell me the negatives. A+, Game of the Year, cult following. This game would have been awesome if it existed. Aberford is one of the many Kickstarter tragedies where a passionate team has a brilliant idea, but by lack of funds and visibility, their passion project has to be cancelled. Which is strange, as it gathered a lot of traction in the mid-2010s. So let's take a look and make hypotheses about this game, what it would have looked like, and why the Kickstarter failed, despite the odds being in their favor. The team website is now defunct, too. This video will be a little less organized than the others. First, we'll compile all the information we know about the game and what it was supposed to be like. Then we'll talk about the failed Kickstarter. In the background, have some character redesigns. First, we know that this game would have been available on Windows PC, but they had planned ports for Mac, Linux, PS3/4, Xbox One, Wii/Wii U, and Xbox 360 if they made it in time before Microsoft closed down the indie store. As they were shooting for a wide compatibility, they expected the game to run on older machines, as it was supposed to be about as heavy as an older BioWare game, and according to the Kickstarter, the game was supposed to be released in December 2017. The game was inspired of this Tumblr post. I'm not going to read it all as some plot points will be discussed later down the line, but it all started with images of women with various household weaponry, some of which have been used in other media of this sort. And creatives being creatives, Tumblr user Goddess of Cheese wrote, "This makes me want a video game about a zombie apocalypse that only affects men, so it's up to the housewives of 50s America to save humanity." Aberford's story takes place post-World War II and during the start of the Cold War in 1956. In the town/city of Aberford in Ohio, home to a joint research facility with the US Army and Edwin Valier Industrial Laboratories. However, I have also seen the name Edwin Voorhees around, but I will keep the French name as, for me, it's easier to pronounce. My apologies if they would have ended up keeping the Dutch name. Among the fine folk of Aberford are these ladies: Peggy, Betty, Sylvia, Norma, Doris, Miri, Alejandra, and Patricia. Out of all of them, Peggy Whitman and Betty Smith are two of the main characters, with Doris Baker and Sylvia Hornberger as the protagonists. Not only is this shown on the Kickstarter page, but Peggy and Betty have individual outfit DLCs that would be tier rewards, and all four of them have a collective outfit bundle in another tier reward. If the stretch goal was achieved, the game would have been translated and subtitled, so not dubbed, into French, German, Russian, Japanese, and Chinese. They were considering adding Portuguese to the list as well. It's a hybrid of a graphic adventure game like Wolf Among Us, with complex moral choices and narrative options with QTEs, which would impact the information that comes out during a conversation, the dynamic of the group, the course of action that the group ultimately follows, and maybe character death. For those who are not familiar with the term, a QTE is a quick time event, like you would generally see in Until Dawn or other narrative games. The other half is a brawler. The game would play with real-time combat. It would have been from a third-person over-the-shoulder viewpoint with running momentum, combo finishes, and throwing mechanics with T-Boss and Hot Tea. The creators said that the combat would be similar to Dragon Age or other BioWare games, and if you guys know me, I loved BioWare, past tense. For most of the game, the other women, so Peggy, Betty, Doris, and Sylvia, would fight with you unless it was a specific scene where the character fights alone. You would be able to switch between the characters in combat, and they would have their strengths and weaknesses, and at least one canon gruesome death, which I will talk about when I detail all that I could find about the characters. So the mechanics sort of seem like Dragon Age 2. There was supposed to be a single story mode and a single multiplayer zombie bashing mode. It was described as very dark, but the combat would be fun and less stressful than a survival horror game. They wanted an easy to learn but hard to master system for the casuals to have fun and for the masochists to have a challenge. Each woman would also have their own storyline with their own goals, worries, history, life, marriage, and personality. But before we get into each of the characters, let's talk about the main story. The main pitch is, in 1956, Edwin Valier Industrial Laboratories, and I just now noticed that the initial spell evil, was trying to create super soldiers for the Cold War, and developed a serum that could genetically modify humans, giving them enhanced speed, agility, strength, and brain power. Scientists found a way to modify the serum such that it could activate itself in the presence of high doses of testosterone, thus isolating the effects to mostly men, mostly because of sexism. The serum was a success, and sales skyrocketed. What developers did not anticipate was the human body's incapacity to handle the serum. The mental and physical overexertion triggered a mental decay which speeds up within a few months after usage of the serum. The brain of these users are left with only the most basic survival reflexes, transforming the users into strong, fast, agile, emotionless human shells, devouring any mobile life in their path. Bites of the affected individuals could place copies of the rogue serum into bodies of the bitten, giving them the symptoms. Shortly after, the serum evolved into a sort of genetic virus, causing mental decay in just days. No one was safe, except the women. And I use the term man and woman very, very loosely here, but I'll get back to that later. The story itself would be separated into 5 chapters and begins with the ladies fighting for survival, as the stakes gradually get higher and higher until they must save the world from this ailment that will infect between a third and a half of the world's population. You would have to play as all 4 characters to beat the game and to have the full story, and each scene would be weaved with another, Hotline Miami 2 style but in chronological order for the most part. Combat would be focused on strategy as you're playing someone with no combat training with only realistic weapons at your disposal. The chapters would take you through scenic little Aberford, its quaint neighborhood, its busy center, and its Cold War laboratories. The 50s were shaped by the fear of violence, as humanity has just come out of some of its darkest hours and the Cold War just started. So on top of all I'm going to talk about in this video, it was the perfect setting for a zombie survival game, as zombies in media lets you tap into those fears and the themes that go with it. Conformity, loss of individuality, loss of humanity, the feral nature of human beings. Quote, "It seems like many people in the 50s were afraid to be different, or to go against society's norms." End quote. So they lived and tried to conform, but it's not a fair choice for both men and especially for women, and the game wanted to make that clear for the audience. The story itself would focus on the real test of survival at the start of a zombie plague. The first time you have to bash a human's head to keep it from killing you. The first time you have to leave a mangled body behind. The moment that you accept that this is what you're doing today and for the rest of your life, it pushes these women to their physical and emotional limits, having them find their true inner strength. The sudden violence of zombies would help them make those fears fall, and that's why the characters can emerge in the ways they would if they didn't live in a society that would punish them for speaking or acting out. While the main campaign focuses on their immediate fight for survival against the affected and the uninfected men who want to protect them from harm, and their battle to find the source and stop zombie attacks, the details and underlying issues of their lives and marriages would come to light during cutscenes. Well, Telltale was a huge inspiration for Aberford. The game would have dialogue choices and would give you some variety on one playthrough. The plan was linear, with at least one alternative ending, probably because of the one gruesome death per playable character mentioned earlier. True branching stories would be a stretch goal because of how long they take to make, as it raises the stakes and increases replayability. According to a post on their Tumblr page, one of the plot points would be either Peggy or Sylvia's teen son making enough testosterone to turn into a zombie. We can suppose that this plot point's resolution would be to find the cure early enough to save him or to put him out of his misery in self-defense. There would also be a moment where either Sylvia, Peggy, or Doris gets injured, as seen in this quote by Betty. "I've been throwing these names around for too long, so let's connect the face to these lovely names, shall we?" And what I appreciate in games is when characters are normal for the time. Sure, some games might require something a little more fitting, like a super soldier or a perfect princess or an omnipotent alien being. But in zombie media, I prefer when characters are a little more realistic. They're all, or almost all of them, housewives. Peggy is a professional baseball player turned unhappy housewife and terrible cook. Her love for baseball was hushed by her mother, who pushed her to abandon her career, and she caved under the pressure and expectation to be a homemaker. She's angry and argumentative, and is not afraid to get her hands dirty. She's tenacious and strong-willed. Being told no is a personal challenge. Combat-wise, she grants a bonus for melee weapons and thrown attacks. Her strategy is to be aggressive, so she would have attacked the nearest target. She's a mother of 3 and is married to Arthur Whitman, captain of the Aberford police department. When she gets attacked in her home by an infected man, it's up to her and her neighbors to find out what's going on and put a stop to it. Betty Smith is a former army nurse who still works as a nurse at Aberford General, and she's everything a 1950s woman was expected to be and then some. Sadly, it is all a facade, and she is also unsatisfied in her role. Not only must she deal with the pressure that comes with the gender roles at the time, but she has to deal with discrimination based on her skin color. According to the creators, part of Betty's story have been tricky to write, because some characters are racist not within the main 4, and she can't get mad about it, because of the societal norms at the time. While there isn't institutional segregation in Ohio in 1956, she would still be treated as a second-class citizen, and, quote, "The racism has been tougher to write than the deaths so far, and my impulse is to have the characters lash out and yell, 'That's racist, motherfucker,' but that would not have happened in the 50s. It gave us an angle on more insidious forms of racism where minorities are held to higher standards, yet given less respect. So we get to look at the toll this sort of pressure takes as the world collapses into a zombie crisis. She knows that people hate her irrationally, and she takes it and keeps going because she has to. Her acceptance of her poor treatment lets the writer explore why otherwise decent people become thoughtless oppressors, and why the people who stand up and say enough is enough are important. Outside of her small circle of friends, she's ignored, overlooked, and treated as if she's somehow inferior to other, less accomplished women, which is relevant in both 1950s and today. Her husband is Philip Smith, security liaison for Edwin Valier Industrial Labs. They have no children. She's kind, protective, and extremely competent. Combat-wise, she has a bonus to movement speed and a bonus to damage with light weapons. Her strategy is to be protective, so she would have targeted zombies who are targeting the player. Doris is a little older than the other women. She fought on the home front during World War II as a riveter and felt at home working hard labor, but like so many other women, she was promptly pushed back into the margins when the men came home. She was better at her job than most men, but was replaced anyways because of her gender and her status as a mother of 4. She's married to Rolf Baker, whom she met at the local theater. She now works as a waitress in what I suppose is a diner given her uniform, and she does not enjoy her work. #relatable. But the zombie attack gives her a chance to step up and let her personality shine. She's tough as nails and ready to fight for her country and neighbors, as there's no challenge she isn't up to. She's committed to doing her duty as a citizen of Aberford and the United States. She is of Lebanese descent, but she passes for white. Combat-wise, she has a bonus to speed with heavy weapons and reduced damage from incoming attacks. Her planned combat tactic is defensive, targeting the strongest or most dangerous foe first. Sylvia is a brilliant scientist with a sharp mind that helps keep her co-slayers alive. She used to work in biological research at Edwin Valier Industrial Laboratories, but was pushed out of her job of 6 years, as it was, quote-unquote, immoral for a mother to be involved with this project. And even then, she struggled to be taken seriously in her field because of her gender. Now she's bored out of her mind. Apparently, the real reason is much worse and would have been revealed in the last chapter of the game. My theory is that she's the one who created the serum, but the Matilda effect took place and one of her male co-workers took credit for her work and pushed her out of the labs. Because of the reasons cited before. That, or she was patient 0 for women, as combat-wise, well, I actually see conflicting information about her. She either has a bonus to utility effects and reduced cooldown times, or she doesn't have any advantages but she has a special mode. As she gets attacked and injured, she can go berserk and unleash what was called nerd rage. She gets up faster and bloodthirsty. Regardless, her fighting style would be predatory and she would target zombies that can be defeated the fastest. She met her now husband Carl Hornberger, and I hope that's how you pronounce it, at work. She has 2 kids with him. She's fast, resourceful, and dangerous, and her character card also says beard. The first explanation why, which is the least likely one, is that she struggles with body hair with the rise of the shaving industry for women due to PCOS, which was not well known then and is still not well known about now. The second option, which is much more likely, is that her husband is gay. A beard in gambling is a fake customer or companion, or one who helps conceal infidelity in a monogamous relationship by acting as a cover. But in gay slang, a beard is a woman who accompanies a gay man or a man who accompanies a lesbian, in order to give the impression of heterosexuality. It is unknown if she knows about her husband's sexuality. Each of the 4 women came from a background where they felt fulfilled and useful, only to be shoved back into traditional roles so men could take back their jobs after World War II. They grew in the Depression and worked interesting jobs, so they would have learned some skills to be tough and resourceful. We have information on some of the secondary characters. I'll just go in alphabetical order as we only have the bare bones and not even a sketch. Except for Norma, but we'll get to her. They play roles in the main story and would have been available to play as in free play mode. However, they would have had full campaigns as stretch goals. There is conflicting information about Alejandra. On some posts, it is said that she is the one completing a degree in mathematics. On another post, her husband is the one who completed a degree in mathematics at BYU. Unfortunately, given that her husband is a Mormon in the 50s and that she doesn't speak English well and the degree was done in BYU, I think he would be the one to have a degree. She fell in love with a Mormon missionary in Mexico and married him after he finished his degree. The couple could not have picked a worse date to begin a new life in Aberford. Because of her language barrier and race, she would also showcase the apathy people have towards her issues. Also #relatable for the language barrier. Also, she's very self-reliant and is a very talented painter. Mary will have the writers dive into the idea of who is really quote-unquote American. She's a third-generation American, but had to face the treatment Japanese and Japanese Americans had to endure during World War II on American soil, facing her teenage years in a wartime internment camp. After relocating to Aberford, Ohio, her father sent her to college where she earned a degree in engineering. She built rockets for Edwin Valier Industrial Laboratories. As far as we know, much to her mother's irritation, she is unmarried. Norma Thompson was a GI in World War II and is the manager of Miss Butler's boarding house for girls and young women. That's a mouthful. I would have loved to see how this place and this character fit in the overall story. Maybe it was used as a safe place for survivors. Anyway, Norma is transgender and has been taking a black market anti-androgen for several years before the game starts, which makes her about as much at risk of turning into a zombie as the rest of the ladies in the cast, which is very low but never zero. The zombies cause a disruption in her supply, which plays a small role in the main campaign and would have been the focus of Norma's side campaign if that stretch goal was reached. A fun fact is that she's inspired of Christine Jorgensen, or is it Jorgensen? She's the best known GI turned babe of the US. Patricia Baker is 16, she's a cheerleader and the daughter of Doris Baker. Yeah, that's all we know about her. We do know that the zombie outbreak has been particularly bad at her high school, but that's it. As you may have understood by now, the core of this game is the gender divide of the 1950s. No, as far as I know, there are no mentions of lobotomies, vibrators, or drugs in the game, but hey, the entire plot wasn't revealed to the public. With Betty, Norma, Alejandra, and Mary, we see how that kind of treatment goes downhill, and being part of a minority or young makes things much, much worse. More than the gender divide, the core of this game is double standards, to highlight the flawed mentality behind every kind of discrimination. And hey, if they discriminated a little less, everybody would have been a superhuman zombie by now. Truly the end goal of a lifetime. Like every story dealing with these topics, it opens up valuable discussions that is true to the game's setting, but sadly is still relevant for modern audiences. Bearing the zombies, of course. And speaking of, let's focus on the zombie plague. The zombies are more similar to 28 Days Later or The Maze Runner, not The Walking Dead, so they would be dangerous even in small numbers, being fast and aggressive, but mentally inert. Like fighting the angry drunk who's not completely wasted, using your wits, agility, and unleashed rage. You won't be mowing through enemies, but you will have the tools to fight back and look awesome doing it, using objects you find laying around. Frying pans, vacuum cleaners, flat irons, tires, and pistols. Some guns, at least. Aberford, much like normal, well-wired people, don't have piles of guns and ammo laying around. The zombie symptoms are magnified by the amounts of testosterone one would have in their body. The primary symptom is murderous rage and complete disregard for one's safety. The effect is terrifying and deadly, which is also why children aren't at risk of being infected. However, despite being children, we can suppose that teenagers can potentially become zombies, depending on the amount of testosterone they have in their body. Women would typically just have elevated aggression apparently, and not the 10,000 side effects that come with higher testosterone levels. Take a shot every time I say testosterone. The reason why I said that I use men and women loosely is because the serum doesn't work based on gender, but on hormones. If we look at the global median, sure. People born with penises have more testosterone than people born with vulvas, it's a fact. However, men with low testosterone levels would have less catastrophic symptoms, and women with PCOS or high testosterone would be at risk. And for intersex people, just like for everyone else, it would just depend on their hormonal imbalance and how each individual reacts with the serum effects. It's also the reason why younger zombies would have berserker-like behaviors. Why is the greaser zombie kinda hazier? The reason why men would be more at risk is because they were probably the only ones to take the serum. As I said in the plot summary, they would probably be the only ones allowed to buy it, therefore would be the only ones to be infected by the serum itself. Any minor or women infected would be through a zombie bite in that case. Men in this situation would also feel like they have to do it all themselves in order to be quote-unquote men, whatever that means, even though they're the ones susceptible to the virus. The patriarchy does harm to women especially, but in the end it harms everyone, and I feel like we could have seen that side of the narrative too in Aberford. The main writer said that these zombies were primarily inspired of Cujo by Stephen King, from the perspective of the rabbit Saint Bernard. Quote, "As the swelling worsens, the dog is in a constant state of pain and blames it on anything it sees, starting with a squirrel and working its way up to people, but Cujo thinks that killing will make the pain go away. The rage is blurry and confused, and fascinating and terrifying, and it's stuck with them all these years and shaped the Aberford zombies." End quote. So they act like this rabid dog, operating on instinct and driven to a homicidal rage by the pain and sickness. The weapons are recognizable as items that can cause harm or just something they were holding. They are overall fairly difficult to kill as they're not technically undead. Completely switching topics here, let's talk about the assets. One of the Kickstarter goals for the campaign was to compose and record covers or remixes of modern songs in a 1950s style. Think swing, jazz, rock and roll, etc. Otherwise, it will have 50s flavor tracks as the background music, and a few real 50s songs with low royalties. They were also negotiating with Postmodern Jukebox to use one of their songs in the game. The art for this game is made in Unity. The characters use a cel-shaded aesthetic with thick line art, which is another sign that Telltale is an inspiration for them. But it also gives a bold look to the characters. Although they look a little uncanny in the videos, we need to remember that all of this was pre-alpha. It would have looked a lot more polished in the final game. Each of the women would have multiple unlockable textures for their dresses, and multiple outfits would have been a stretch goal. If they planned a sequel, or if they overfunded, they would have created a game that is a little more free range, similar to Sunset Overdrive. Sadly, as the Kickstarter failed, neither the first nor the second game will ever see the light of day. And speaking of, let's talk about that Kickstarter campaign. First of all, there were about 2,000 backers with an average donation of $47. They were asking for $585,000 but only got $90,000, reaching only 15% of its total goal. Man, I wish I had that kind of budget for my games. It spanned over 34 days from September 15th to October 19th, 2015. The Kickstarter had different tiers, ranging from $10 to $10,000. Please note that every tier increase comes with all of the previous rewards and goodies. At $10, you had the helpful bystander, and you get a backer forum badge and Aberford wallpaper and the dev's gratitude. For $200, you're a fierce Amazon. You get a third digital copy of Aberford, a special Aberford t-shirt, a printed and signed concept art by Sketchy Panda Games, your name in the credits as a citizen of Aberford. Honestly, it's weird that backers get their name in the credits only if they hand out $200. Shouldn't all backers be credited? Maybe it was not commonplace at the time to credit everyone. It still seems weird. And finally, for $10,000, you're an Aberford Zombie Defense Committee founding member. You also get a domestic flight to Utah to meet the team and help contribute voice work and or motion capture for using Aberford with full credit for your work. Sketchy Panda Games provides food and lodging as well. It would have been economy class. Sketchy Panda Games was willing to work with international travelers, and additional expenses would have been the responsibility of the backer. Holy shit, someone actually paid for this. I say this very positively. Despite all of those promising rewards on top of a great game to play, the campaign still failed in October 2015. But why? Probably because of the freakishly high amount of money they asked for, among other issues. The end goal was 585,000 USD baseline. And while there are stories of games reaching 300% funding in the first 6 hours, that could distort people's perception of the platform. Slow climbs on Kickstarter are very common in high-value campaigns that do not have famous people attached to it. And although the price is high for a Kickstarter, it is lower than prices seen for AAA and AA games. For comparison, Dragon Age Inquisition and Mass Effect Andromeda cost $150 million USD and 100 million Canadian dollars to make, respectively. The SparkNotes version of their spreadsheet is that they expected Aberford to be done in 2 years, which themselves say is pretty fast. So, as we know with Kickstarter and indie games, there will be delays. They haven't said it, but 2 years is a huge time crunch for a game of this scale with a team of 8 people. Mind I remind you that Dragon Age 2 cut a lot of corners and was done in a year and 6 months. So they put out this price including taxes and health insurance and software licenses, so each employee would cost about $60,000 a year, USD. Meaning you need 6 Aberford Zombie Defense Committee funding members, tier backers, to fund one employee. But good programmers typically cost more than that. Just for the people to make it, Aberford will cost $960,000, and I quote, "None are being paid nearly as well as we wish we could pay them." In total, Aberford would have cost 1 million USD to make, maximum 1.3 million. Internally, they knew they could cover the difference with a mix of loans, private investors, and personal savings, but they don't become available until they would have showed that there was a market for the game, hoping that 20,000 people would be willing to pay for it. About $600,000 is half the budget, and they would pull the rest themselves, especially as they have no publisher, and that is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you keep total control of your game, may it be artistically or story-wise. On another hand, it means that you have to do all the advertising yourself. It's not exactly the same medium, but a good example is indie or self-publishing books versus traditional publishing, or independent shows against the mass-marketed slop you find on streaming platforms or in theaters. In this case, I do believe that choosing not to contact a publisher would have been a good thing for the game, because publishers that let you retain complete control over your game are few and far between, not to mention legal issues that can happen down the line. If this is a passion project, why let someone else place their grubby mitts all over it? But I digress. TLDR, even if it is a factor in the Kickstarter failure, probably, they were right in not contacting a publisher. Most Kickstarters already had a playable, polished-ish demo available, or a proof of concept. The best example I can give is the Noire Academy one. Yes, the amount reached is much, much smaller, but they could quickly get it and a few stretch goals mostly because people loved the demo. Concept art alone is very often, in most cases, not enough to guarantee that people will want to throw money at the screen for your game, despite how well the game concept was received and how much love was shown to the devs on their social media pages. With the failed Kickstarter campaign, they did say that they wanted to retry once they had a playable demo, but here's the thing, they also lacked gameplay footage. They had a smallish trailer and previews and a long video with explanations, but show don't tell is valid here as well. A gameplay video would have been, in my opinion, the minimum required. Still, that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate what has been tried out, and there have been discussions of making a series of videos to try and capture all the discussions they had on Tumblr. As the blog had more than 1,700 posts at the time, probably more when it ended. It would have made my job so much easier if these videos ever saw the light of day. I do think it was marketed towards the right people though. I mean, it's Tumblr, and if the 2010s on Tumblr has taught me anything, it's that the media at the time was so devoid of good representation that we would latch onto anything with a good story and good representation. Or any stories where you could ship two white men. I say this with love. If they marketed this on, let's say modern Twitter for example, you'd have dumb piss babies who don't know what a shower is being sexist and racist, and having their brains melt out of their ears like cottage cheese just because they saw a cast of mostly women. And some of them aren't white or cis or straight. Hey, as the company said in their frequently asked questions, if you hate it, you can always skip the cutscenes and just kill stuff. They also reached out to some celebrities, but I don't know who, I don't know how well that went, and there are no updates on this front. However, this small team was nothing if not positive. They also really honed in on the fact that if the Kickstarter failed, then the backers would get their money back and production just gets delayed. But if it succeeded, they would get an awesome game. They agreed that the campaign was a long shot, being a bit of a Hail Mary, and they were trying to move forward. They wanted to appear in some game-related media. They wanted to make a series of videos that recapped community discussions, as I said before. They also wanted to reach out to journalists and people at Polygon and stuff like that. When the Kickstarter failed, they were wondering how to proceed. And the most likely scenario is that they would put a hold on art production and focus on the game and combat engine. It's way easier to replace an asset than the core game code after all. They would have to keep working on it part-time. Another option was to reduce the scope of the project and start again, only starting a Kickstarter and rewards for Chapter 1. They wanted to change and test if the market was able to fund a big game from early development to completion, as, quote, it would have been a real game changer in terms of what indie companies would offer and make. And I believe that maybe it wasn't possible in 2015, but could be possible in 2026, as we Kickstarters with higher and higher goals for indie projects getting funded, no questions asked. And I do believe that they kept working all the way to the closing bell. But, well, they said that they're not giving up on us. And it has been 10 years with no update, and the Sketchy Panda Games website is now defunct and unarchived on the Wayback Machine. If you look at their Kickstarter page, the comments are all really positive and either asking for Sketchy Panda to try again, wishing the game had come out, or asking for information. I tried contacting the team over on Tumblr or email to ask for news, but as of right now I didn't get a reply. Perhaps I'll never get one. Oh well, c'est la vie. I think this game would have done wonders in 2017. With the current rise of conservatism and dangerous men and women who weaponize strict, impossible ideals and insecurities for profit, now is more important than ever to have games like this, with deep, well-written, introspective journeys while keeping the fun element of strategically bashing heads with the first item you see. Especially with the rising trend of the stay-at-home girlfriend by choice on some brain-dead social media platform. Women have fought so hard to not be forcibly tied to a loveless marriage, and have all of their money be controlled by someone else, and others willingly put themselves at risk of financial abuse. But this is another discussion, and I highly encourage you to watch these two videos if you're interested in the topic. Kind of a heavy note to end on, but I thought it was important to mention, especially after talking about the topics of the video. This also doesn't mean that the core concept has not been utilized, as the TTRPG Housewives with Chainsaws exist, and like it's written on the tin, it's 50s housewives fighting foes with chainsaws. I need to try it out one day. Kind of an expeditive outro, but the next video will be about a pixel horror RPG and will feature some feline flair and a retro supernatural charm. So, in order to not miss that, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, boost the video. You know how all of this works. I'm counting on you to spread the love. Until then fellas, I will see you all around the internet. Have the loveliest of lovely days.